Welcome, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, Learning from Ukraine, Leveraging the Social Protection System to Respond to the Full-Scale Invasion. And we are quite glad that we have, at least in the registration form, quite good expected participation. And we'll slowly start as people are still connecting in. So, the title of the presentation is quite explicit, but we'll get to the details what we have in mind, and we'll also get to the panelists. So, my name is Lukas Voborsky. I'm the team leader for the technical assistance facility of the PeReHID initiative, and I'm seconded by staff facility. And this webinar will delve a little bit more into how the initial shock responsive social protection measures that were taken to respond to the invasion in Ukraine were basically utilized, what are the lessons learned, what was the rapid response effectiveness, how quickly we could mobilize the shock responsive social protection measures, and what was the complementarity between the social protection response to the emergency and that of the humanitarian actors. And that's the main line, and these are the learnings we would wish to share. We will do first some housekeeping. So this session will be recorded and all the presentations will be available later at socialprotection.org. And we will also use AI to capture automatic captions. And we'll use the chat box to communicate with you as audience. Of course, please present yourselves in the chat box. You can use comments, you can share links, or if you have ideas that are related to the webinar. And we'll be also sort of manning the chat box to monitor what is coming in and to collect your questions. That's something we will actually respond to, or we'll have slots where the panelists will comment on each other's short presentations or inputs. But if you have between the different slots, but the main time for questions and answers will be at the end of the main core block of presentations. Now, coming back to the structure of the session, of the flow, we are running the introduction, then we'll do a bit of the presentation discussions, Q&As, and at the end some short closing that will be summing up some of the learnings that we also made in Ukraine that are more globally applicable. And now to the panelists. So who is with us today? So we have Ms. Darina Marchak, the first Deputy Minister of the Ukrainian Ministry of Social Policy. Welcome, Darina. Then we have Nithin Umapathi, the Program Leader for Human Development from the World Bank. Welcome, Nithin. And Olena Skrypnikova, the Head of Innovating Financing and Cash Transfer Programming Unit at the Ukrainian Red Cross Society. Welcome, Olena. And lastly, we have Frederic Wiesenbach, shock responsive social protection expert that is seconded by UNICEF to the PeReHID Initiative's Technical Assistance Facility. Welcome, Frederic. So now, without any further delay, I will just show a few slides to frame the discussion and also to understand why we are talking about this PeReHID initiative and what it is. So the PeReHID initiative is a technical collaboration of the partners that you see in the logo band below, but I can list them, of course. We have the Ministry of Social Policy of Ukraine as the chair of the initiative, and we have UNICEF and the humanitarian coordinator, resident coordinator as the co-chair on the UN system side, and then we have a rotating co-chair, one of the humanitarian donor agencies. It's a collaboration that is quite inclusive with UN agencies, main donors, some of them also dual mandated like FCDO, SDC, and SIDA, and national and international NGOs that were voted into the chairmanship or to the steering committee of the initiative. The focus is on There's a humanitarian social protection nexus, which is a topic that is more and more discussed, at least in the humanitarian circles. And our objective was to pave the way for transition of humanitarian caseloads to more shock responsive social protection system and to support related reform agenda. So this is the big framing of what we are starting to do, and this is also kind of the framing for who are the panelists and what we are doing here. Now, our main findings as a technical assistance facilitator was tasked with these objectives. There were a few, and I will just run quickly through them. So Ukraine has a mature social protection system, which is unusual in emergency settings. And it does cover, as you can see on the left, pretty much all different parts of the life cycle, and it has also shock responsive elements. It has war-related programs that address displacement, disability, unemployment, and other things, as you can see now highlighted in red. It also was benefiting of preparedness measures that were in place pre-invasion. So we had some of these programs already legislated, and the Ministry of Social Policy disbursed a total of about 1.65 billion US dollars to registered IDP households in 2022 with cost efficiency of about 98.8%, which is quite an impressive number. So this is the core emergency response by the government and the maturity of the system. On the humanitarian side, we saw unprecedented scale up of humanitarian response in 2022 and 3. This is something that was never seen before in terms of the scope, the budgets, the size of the response. And we also saw the multi-purpose cash assistance as the key delivery modality to cover basic needs in these 2 years. The response was utilizing some of the government systems, specifically IDO Pomoga, which was a self-registration system that was developed by the government of Ukraine, by the Ministry of Social Policy, that enabled quick scale up of the humanitarian response in the early months of the response. And Ukraine also boasts a very strong civil society organization ecosystem that was responding to humanitarian needs from day one, alongside of the established international NGOs that were already in country since 2014, many of them since the initial annexation of Crimea and parts of the Donbass in the east. In terms of cost efficiency, we are looking at about 79.5 and 82 in the respective 2 years that we are looking at for the purpose of the framing of this webinar. Now, where did we start as a technical facility and what's important to know? So the level of alignment between the social protection system and the humanitarian response was relatively limited. Let's say 2 years ago, we would look at some duplication between the two systems, which of course could be also permissible. There are different vulnerabilities that responded to, multiple registration enrollment points, long lead times to some of the programs, and some access barriers to social protection, such as lack of information. And of course, we are talking about a country that is at war, which is not only in countries at war, but in all the countries we always are fighting with face-to-face considerations and limitations when we are trying to run an adequate social protection system. Now, where we can look at how the different actors can play to their strengths, and this is, I think, the leitmotif of the webinar, and that's the way we are thinking, also inviting our panelists. Obviously, we see high cost efficiency gains on the government side related to the economies of scale. And then we are seeing also specific niches that humanitarian organizations came to occupy and where they are very effective, which is, for instance, in the time that it takes for the social protection programs of the government to kick in, or in areas where access barriers are unsurmountable, such as close to the front line and where financial services are not available. And what we see also as an important element is, of course, looking at some sort of transitional top-ups, looking at leveraging the government systems to deliver aid, being very close to them, and of course stimulating that the shock responsive parts of the social protection system are further scaled and improved. To sum it up in terms of recommendations from our side, really it is about having a social protection lens in the humanitarian response, linking to the key social protection programs, adapting the targeting to understand where the gaps are, which groups are actually undercovered within the social protection system or experiencing access barriers, and leveraging the systems to deliver aid, scaling up vertical and horizontal expansions to deliver aid, and potentially developing digital interfaces to improve humanitarian targeting. Frederic, you wanted to come in? Or that was an old missing hand? Okay, probably. Let's run through the rest. And then, of course, social protection reforms and financing, we need to optimize, continue optimizing and improving the shock responsiveness, reduce the non-take-up and access barriers, and mainly, and this is very important, provide long-term predictable bilateral and multilateral financial support. It's nothing new, but obviously in a country like Ukraine, in a situation that it is in, this is essential. And then in terms of the collaboration between the different elements, the humanitarian actors, social protection actors, and the government, joint planning is necessary, and so is also setting of collective outcomes and financing, and enabling digital data exchange and potentially addressing data protection barriers that would further enable third sector, non-profit sector, and humanitarian actors to deliver efficiently. So having said that, we will zoom in on the period of response, which was in 2022, and on some general reflections. And I will pass on to our dear guest, Darina Marchak. Please, Darina.
Hello, dear colleagues. Thank you very much for a chance to talk to the audience. And I'm very sorry for my English. Probably it's not probably, but for sure it's far from perfect. But I will try to be understandable. Please let me know if you see my presentation.
So far, so good, Darina. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So speaking about shock responsive social protection in Ukraine, I would like to make a couple of major highlights on how we reacted. When we just when the war began, as probably most of you know, we had the big share of the territory of Ukraine occupied by the aggressor country army. And that led to a situation when we had the huge amount of internally displaced people immediately in our country. Within the 2022 year only, 3.5 millions of new IDPs have emerged in Ukraine. So the task of the government was to quickly support those people who are in need and who lost their possessions and apartments, either because of the destruction of these apartments or because of the occupation of the territories. So just 3 weeks after the war has started, the full-scale war, in 3 weeks after the full-scale war has started, we have launched our biggest social safety net programs. It's the program for IDP support, and we covered from the very beginning around 500,000 people, but by the end of the 2022, already 3.5 million IDPs were in the program. On top of that, we have managed to deliver a number of other programs. They were not that big at scale, but as well, these programs have mattered as a support for our families. For example, we have launched the shelter project, which covered accommodation for around 140,000 Ukrainian families, not IDPs, but families. We also have started such programs like compensation of utility tariffs for those legal entities that have provided support and accommodation for Ukrainian IDPs. And on top of them, we had a very major risk of disrupting of all major social safety net programs, because prior to the war, these programs were decentralized and were implemented mostly in the paper, based on the paper documents in a decentralized manner. So together with launching new programs for immediate crisis support for those families who are in need, we also had to rebuild fully our internal operations as a government to ensure that those major safety net programs like social house utility subsidy are still delivered to our citizens. One of the biggest issues that, as far as I understand, was a surprise for our partners as well, was the pace that we had launching new programs. For example, we needed only 2 days to restore the pension payments after the war has started. We also managed to fix only in 11 days how we pay social payments to those families who left the occupied territories or at the front line, where the governmental bodies have stopped delivering their services. We also it also took only 2 weeks for us to distribute the new assistance for those thousands of families that have suffered from the Kakhovka dump destruction in June 2023, and so on. The major tool how we managed to do all those operations was, of course, digital. De facto, during the full-scale war, we managed to deliver 2 very robust digital systems. The first one and the immediate one to appear was Ye-Dopomoga system. Ye-Dopomoga was an IT tool in which every family that suffered had possibility to submit its online claim for support, and our international partners, humanitarian organizations, donors, took some portion of financing of these claims. And as you see, within this Ye-Dopomoga tool, we had got around 13 million applications from Ukrainians, and of them we had around 250,000 low-income families, 1.3 million IDPs. Of course, not all of these applications were covered, but at the very earliest stages of the full-scale invasion, this instrument proved to be very efficient, and this instrument helped us to coordinate international crisis response as well to support our families. But very soon after the war has started, we managed also to launch our own programs, and these programs were really big in scale, as already Lukas pointed out. For example, for IDPs families, for IDPs allowances, we have spent around 1.6 billion US dollars in 2022 and around $2 billion in 2023. I would say, and it is very important, that this money was spent from the state budget. So it was a centralized payment of social safety net program. But of course, we are very thankful for all our international partners that helped us to finance that and other allowances through the state budget. Another big programs that were delivered during the full-scale war, these are the house utilities program, which is around $1 billion US dollars, and support for low-income families and support for families in difficult life circumstances. So actually, regardless the launch of the war, we as a government managed to deliver all planned safety net programs and assistance programs to our citizens, but simultaneously to launch new, very big in scale programs like IDPs assistance. Here on the slide, you can have a look on the pace of launching these instruments. And I would like to pay attention at this slide and at October 22, because in October 22, we managed to fully launch in a productive mode the unified information system of the social sphere, which is a centralized digital tool to deliver social assistance. And the start of the development of this tool happened only after the full-scale invasion. That is, during the full-scale war, at these very chaotic times, with difficulty of having state civil servants and public officials in different parts of the country, with bombing all around the country, we have managed to deliver the new digital IT tool that is already now is the major tool to operate and to manage all the social assistance in the country in principle. Here is the one slide about this unified unified information system of the social sphere, as we call it, ESSS. Which actually covers the architecture of this system. But on top of that, we have managed to deliver the services for our citizens also by DIA product. Those who work with Ukraine know that DIA is one of the major and very popular digital tools to provide social services and any kind of administrative services to Ukrainians. And we've managed to launch the DIA tool within months. And by March 2023, we have already around 18 million people that were users of this tool. Finally, another remarkable, I would say, tool that we have managed to implement during the full-scale war, and I'm very thankful for those international partners that supported us in this effort, is the joint of our programs with between government and international partners. We have managed to launch this instrument together with the WFP, UNICEF, UNHCR programs. And the idea of these programs was that the government has the digitalized registry of vulnerable groups of citizens that need financial assistance in different situations. In particular, we are speaking about the IDPs, people with disabilities, families with kids, pensioners, including low-income pensioners, and so on. So instead of duplicating resources when the government provides its own assistance and the international or humanitarian partner provides its own assistance to the same audience, we have managed to cooperate in a manner when we as a government provided the list of those people who needed this assistance according to our registers, and international or humanitarian partner covered the top-ups for these families in difficult situations. For example, together with UNICEF, we have managed to cover Ukrainian families that have suffered from the Ahmadid bomb shelling in July 2024. Together with WFP program, we have managed to cover pensioners who have the lowest pensions and who are living in the frontline zone. And together with UNHCR, we have managed to cover with substantial support those families who were cut off of the centralized gas or electricity provision and who use coal and wooden sources of heat in the accommodation, so that these families have sufficient financing to buy these energy resources. And thus we have, I think, established the new standards of cooperation between humanitarian partners and the government during the crisis operations, how we can act together, not duplicating, but cooperating each other. Thank you very much, partners. I know some of you are here on this call for this support. So overall, these are like three major features of our crisis support. Fast launch of the massive state budget financed social safety net programs, fast digitalization of all operation, and joint programs with humanitarian partners to cover those who are in the most need without putting additional financial pressure on the government. I will be ready to answer the questions, if any. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Darina. Yeah, it's good to see that the parts about the speed and the timeliness of the government response is also visible from your slides. Maybe we could bunch up questions to you, Darina, and to Nithin for the sake of time together. Nithin, perhaps would you like to come in and kind of follow up also on Darina's slides, because you are part of the World Bank group, and World Bank is one of the key partners to the Ministry of Social Policy in terms of actually financing the core social protection programs. And what would be your takes on the general topics that we are discussing here? Over to you.
Thank you, Lukas, and thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. First of all, I want to recognize the government donors and partners who contributed to the social protection system. You know, it's very impressive and remarkable that as a result, the social protection system maintained its resilience, continuation of its services, and its impressive record over the last 4 years. And that says something, because unlike many other settings where you have conflict and underdeveloped safety nets, Ukraine actually has a well-developed system and has been undergoing a lot of reform. It's quite comprehensible. It's quite comprehensive. It's adaptable. If you think about it, almost 3% of GDP goes to social assistance, and around and if you take pensions into account, it's a very large number of in proportion to GDP. And it's closer to EU, in fact, because it reaches around 60% of the population. So it is far from being a setting where you don't have safety nets, or you have underdeveloped safety nets, where humanitarian assistance becomes extremely critical. And so our approach, given this context, was to focus on strengthening the capacity of the current institutions and programs, and so that the support that will go to the citizens is nationally driven and driven using existing delivery systems. And there are several advantages to that, because you're able to piggy-ride on existing systems. It reduces costs. It is making sure that administrative complexity does not increase, and ultimately it promotes sustainability. And in this regard, using these principles, we essentially supported expansion of eligibility of current programs, such as GMI, introducing targeted temporary support measures and support to local government capacity building. So these are the kind of principles that guided our approach. And I think what Darina just presented, I think aligns with that very well, where even humanitarian assistance essentially was channeled through government systems. And I think going forward, we have to continue this work. There is quite a bit of remaining challenge in terms of improving coordination mechanisms, both within the government, between various ministries, and also there's always work for improving coordination between donors. And specifically, I think within the government, there has to be a lot more harmonization of data governance and creating more interoperable systems between, for example, various actors. So I just want to conclude with a few things. The key lessons to me is that what helped is that there has been always a sustained long-term engagement and relationship with the Ministry of Social Policy, and that created a very solid foundation on which many players and contributors and donors and stakeholders could build on. And the second lesson, especially for other FCV contexts, is that direct support to national systems works when they're relatively well developed. And Ukraine, I think, is a good case study. And that's why it's even important to think ahead and invest in these systems, because they can't be built during a crisis. So ultimately, I think humanitarian assistance played a very important role and should always be welcomed, with a caveat that in the case of more developed settings, I think ideally they should be part of a state-supported, collaborative, and integrated effort. And on that note, I hand it over back to you, Lukas.
Thank you, Nithin. Now that's I think these are brilliant two positions. Maybe I could kick off before questions also from the audience. Out of curiosity, from the World Bank perspective, what would be the instruments that should be then part of this preparedness? Like, is there something that we can put in place in contexts where we have sufficient systems, but we would like to be active in response to some quick onset emergency really quickly? How would you look at basically this, let's say, preparedness measures from shock responsive social protection perspective?
Well, there are three parts to it: policy preparedness, systems preparedness, and fiscal preparedness. And in terms of policy, you can have programs that have this automatic stabilization mechanisms. For example, minimum income programs have this feature: when general incomes fall, the program expands automatically. And I think this is a very good feature. Similarly, when incomes recover, the program shrinks automatically. So having this type of income-sensitive safety nets is very important. And Ukraine has it, and I think it still needs to be developed further. And Ukraine has the GMI program, and that's a good example. Second is systems preparedness. For example, having good data systems that are able to identify the families in need. It could be a registry, but it doesn't have to be a registry. It could be something along the lines what Brazil has, or it could be simply advanced systems that rely on, for example, digital technologies for accessing application, filling out application, and then interoperability between systems like tax authorities or other agencies who can quickly process the information and identify whether this family is truly declaring their needs accurately or not. And then finally, I think fiscal preparedness, because if the fiscal framework does not allow release of funds in a crisis, then it's a problem. Then the other two parts are not sufficient by themselves. You also need this flexibility that you can have access to resources during a crisis. That would be my very, very simple framework for thinking about adaptive safety nets.
Thank you so much, Nithin. Do we have any questions from the audience for Darina and Nithin as of now? Frederic?
We have one question from Stefan asking whether he could elaborate on donor coordination challenges and what would be the best mechanism to address such challenges.
And this is a question directed to?
I think to you, but I'm assuming that Darina could also come in, of course.
Yeah, there are two sides to coordination problems in Ukraine. One is the intergovernmental coordination, and then the other side of it is donor coordination, and then ultimately the coordination that cuts across donors and various government departments and ministries and so on and so forth. And in this case, I think having a very clear strategy where there is a buy-in from both the government side as well as the donor side in terms of what are the forms of policy preparedness, fiscal preparedness, systems preparedness we all agree on, and that should be done not during a crisis. It should be ideally done during pre-crisis. So I think then you have a framework. Then you can at least at a strategic level, there's full coordination. Should we have programs that are 50% targeted, or should we have categorical, or should we have universal programs, and so on and so forth. And there are many issues, including on the fiscal side, on the system side. Should we have registries? Should we have some dynamic registries or not registries? So if you have that at a strategic level, then you can focus on tactical coordination, essentially deciding who is going to do what. And I think this is where there's a challenge, because there's a lot of duplication. And I think the onus is also on the government side to ensure that requests are parceled out to the agency that has the best capacity and resources to implement that component, and essentially convene the donors as well. I mean, donors should not just be by themselves convening themselves. It should be also the government convening the donors. And I think this should be a joint decision at the tactical level, which programs will be supported by who and how. And I think we're already doing that. For example, we have the Spirit initiative funded by FCDO. We now have this very close collaboration between UNICEF and World Bank. And this is essentially one example how we can do it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So there are other mechanisms as well, but I think they should be playing a more supervisory, advisory role, and steering committees and so on should happen. They happen relatively infrequently to be able to helpfully guide the teams and work on a daily basis. So I think there should be some mechanisms, and I just quoted one, which is the Spirit engagement, which allows this type of day-to-day coordination, which is absolutely essential. So I think it sort of sets an example for future partnerships to ensure that there is very tight collaboration.
If I may jump in, I have a couple of technical comments as well. Yeah, I can comment on coordination. of donors with the government. And here I think that a couple of challenges appear. The first major challenge that we faced as a government when trying to cooperate with our partners was the personal data, because both us as a government and all the donors have very strict limitation to share any personal data, which makes the major difficulty when, for example, we as a government cannot provide the personal data with the donors, and the donors cannot provide the personal data of their recipients with us. From technical point of view, I see, and we had this kind of discussions with humanitarian partners about the need to build IT tools to share the depersonalized data by some level of codification. But unfortunately, that approach requires IT investments, both from the government and from donor side. And neither of us was managed to make that kind of investments. We, together with UNICEF, WFP, and UNHCR, we found the very, very tiny way to overcome that limitation. But in principle, this is the question that I would advise to think in advance how you can share the information about the beneficiaries without breaking the rules of personal data information sharing. And the second limitation for me, as I am dealing with the budget financing of the social assistance, for me, the major challenge was the budget limitations of the humanitarian organizations. I know that most, or like up to 100 of humanitarian partners have the limitation not to give any financing to the state budgets. But this disregards such situation as we have in Ukrainian state budget, when we have the general fund of the state budget, but also the special fund of the state budget. And the special fund means that if you provide money for this particular item, you cannot spend this money for any other item ever. And this is put in the law. So if, for example, we do not have that limitation by the humanitarian partners, the cooperation could look like provision of the humanitarian partners to the state special fund line, which ensures that this money will be spent only for those targets, goals of the policy that are in line with the policies of these humanitarian partners. But humanitarian actors does not take into account that specification, like peculiarities of the national legislation, and that didn't allow us to cooperate that way, although it would be the fastest and the easiest for us to make that kind of top-ups with the international partners.
Thank you for the responses. We have very interesting questions, further questions in the chat, and I think it would be easier if colleagues could actually come in directly. So Stefan or whoever asked the question about considering government's experience and the 3 crucial lessons learned, would you like to ask the question directly? I think Fernanda will allow you to take the mic. Is it working? I'm happy to read it out, of course. So it's a question to Darina. Considering the government's experience, what are 3 crucial lessons gained from the coordination between humanitarian actors, development partners, and the Ministry of Social Policy in supporting the link between the humanitarian cash assistance and shock-responsive social protection? And how did the PeReHID initiative facilitate this process? This is the question from colleagues.
I think that PeReHID initiative was very useful in order to to have everyone sit at the same table and to start joint negotiations. Because when we started communication with international partners, we had very different, a lot of discussions which were not synchronized, and our communication with the World Bank was differed from all the communication with humanitarian partners. So in this regard, PeReHID initiative was very useful. I think that all of us, expected that we would have even higher level of cooperation thanks to PeReHID initiative, but it seems that, and it's my lessons learned, that to ensure that we need more readiness to cooperate between humanitarian actors. And it looks that sometimes the particular policy of the humanitarian actor was much more important for this humanitarian actor than efficiency and absence of overlapping, duplication, and so on. So I think that one of the lessons learned is that we could have higher level of cooperation and more efficiency if we could act faster at the earlier stages as one team, not multiple small teams with different targets overall.
Thank you, Darina. I will maybe there are so many questions for you, so I will just maybe bunch up another one very interesting from Diana. Well, was there any direct funding to social protection systems from donors through budget support as opposed to funding humanitarian access for multi-purpose cash assistance? I think it's an easy answer for you, but passing it over to you, please.
Yeah, it's an easy answer. As I mentioned, we are extremely thankful for the World Bank team, because since the start of the full-scale invasion, the World Bank team have managed to launch the peace, so-called peace project, which covered, I think, that the lion's share of the social budget financed by the state budget. And these were money that came directly to the state budget and were disbursed by the governmental agencies. So yeah, the peace project, as far as I know, was co-financed by many partner countries. Probably Nithin could elaborate on that if he's able to join again. But yeah, international development partners financed our needs by direct state budget financing, both by loan agreements and by grant agreements. And simultaneously, we have cooperated with humanitarian partners to have these top-up programs, or at least to understand, for example, that, okay, some partners are covering this particular target audience, so we will not try to focus on this particular target audience. But here, another lesson learned is that, unfortunately, I think that we still had a lot of cases when we had some duplication in financing, financing when, for example, we and some partners covered the same target audience with the same assistance, for example, for subsidies. So, yeah.
Thank you, Darina. Maybe just to also link it to the initial presentation, we see the government of Ukraine dispersing about 1.6 billion in 2022 to IDPs in IDP assistance, whereas we see also 1.5 billion in MPCA. So, and that's not that's the total program size. So there definitely was funding to both kind of pipelines. Having said that, very interesting question from Vincent from WFP. Vincent, would you like to take the mic? I think Fernanda is ready to let you in.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, great.
Yes.
I think, thanks. It's really fascinating, and I've been following the work, I think, since the start of the war quite closely, and the UISSS in particular was really eye-opening, right? Because it's, I think, Darina, you gave some of the elements of the response to my question, but it's eye-opening because it seemed like there was a clear way in which humanitarian donors and actors could still channel financing to a system development or system enhancement of the government, you know, even as they were responding. Because I remember actually being involved in a BHA and I think FCDO grant initially for UISSS in the early stages of the war, and that seemed like such a strategic investment at the time. You know, even though the priority was on life-saving and support, and it led to so many important developments down the road. So I guess my question is you know, from the World Bank perspective, yes, there are mature systems. It's easy to tap into that, but it also showed that, you know, even if direct budget support is difficult, sometimes you can make these really strategic system-level investments. You know, and what are the lessons from Ukraine where mature systems are perhaps not in place, but you do have very long, protracted humanitarian engagement, that you can still try to help build national systems and national capacities to permit these types of efficiencies down the line. Thank you very much.
Is it a question for me? I'm sorry.
I think it is, but we can start. We can try to grapple it.
So I'm not sure that I've got the question properly, but I will try to elaborate. So the major task for us as a ministry from the very beginning was not only to finance immediate needs of our citizens, but also to try to coordinate all our partners in a way that we are able to provide this nexus from humanitarian to development, from humanitarian immediate reaction to the sustainable social assistance system going forward. And for us, the lessons learned was that, and what was very important, was to ensure that donors do not only spend money on some immediate financing needs of particular citizens, but also help us to inject and to develop those instruments that will help us then to cope in principle as a government. Because, no, so what I'm speaking about, we have like 3.5 million IDPs. We can finance IDP allowances for 10 years going forward. If we do not provide individual housing, capacity for work, some job places, care services for kids, and so on, this will, the IDP allowances themselves will be the long-standing need of Ukrainians. Instead, we do not want just to make people dependable from the financial assistance from the government on the permanent basis. Our philosophy is to ensure that simultaneously with provision of the crisis response, we are investing on a systematic manner into the major instruments of the efficient system of social support that will help us to eliminate these crisis support programs going forward. And where I think that what we managed to do, but still with some room for more efficient cooperation, is to discuss with international partners and humanitarian partners which particular elements of this new system could be covered by humanitarian partners. So, like, for example, instead of providing additional financial support for 1,000 IDPs, to provide financials to invest into creation of the small kindergarten in this particular gramada, so that women, IDP women, can go for a job. There is that trade-off. So for us, PeReHID was a tool. We perceived PeReHID as a tool to make that kind of cooperation, not only between whom to pay money right now, but also how to balance immediate financial response with some investment into the future system. And I think that for those social support specialists who are on this call, I just urge you to pay attention on this need, because otherwise these financial injections will not help to solve the problem itself. When the people cannot have their own earning, and that is why they are fully dependable on the governmental assistance on a permanent basis. I'm not sure if you asked that kind of question, but please let me know if you meant something different.
I can maybe come in to complement, and I think it's a very good segue. Thank you, Darina. So, Vincent, I think for one of our lessons learned in terms of bridging the HD divide, as you put it at the end of the question, is really this collaborative planning between the humanitarian, the government, and the development actors. What Darina was mentioning about bringing the people together. And I'm now not coming with anything new. This is literally written in the Interagency Standing Committee good practice document on Nexus from 2021, which is moving from responding to crisis to reducing need. And that's what I basically heard Darina say as well. So of course we cannot perpetually fund response to needs, to crisis needs, of course, if they are there, but we have to, but at the same time, we need to find a way how to reduce them. And one of the good practices flagged there, and this is something that we also were putting forward now in the, so to say, institutionalization of PeReHID, is actually opening the discussion to enhance coherence between government planning of development actors, and planning of humanitarian actors, how collective outcomes across these pillars can be set, so that the agenda that Darina mentioned can be actually materialized in collaboration and in complementarity. I think this is one of the governance lessons learned. And then practically, like what was also in Darina's presentation, if we don't have to have parallel systems for some elements of the emergency response, let's not have them. It doesn't have to be for everything. Obviously, there are things where no system is perfect, but if you can leverage existing assets, obviously we are more cost effective and more we bring higher value for money. So I think to us, these were the three big elements: focus on coherence, on the joint collective planning, collective outcome setting, and basically building bridges, but doing it on policy level, leveraging government systems, and using the humanitarian response and the philanthropy third sector activities to actually enable people to access the entitlements effectively. So these are to us the main learnings. Of course, you can translate it in different contexts where maybe we don't have systems to leverage or connect to, and take it a step back. We can help build the system so that they can be leveraged, or we can implement our humanitarian programming in a way that it helps building these systems. It's a way of working. But in the end, again, it's nothing new, but unfortunately, sometimes the common sense is not so common, and we need to rediscover it and bring people together. So Let us move to Olena. I think we have more questions and we'll come back to them, but I think it would be a nice moment to actually go back to complementarity, because Olena is with the Ukrainian Red Cross Society, and we wanted to have the Red Cross or an equivalent national partner that could actually show how they were going around the complementary response in the early days of the invasion. Olena, the floor is yours, and we'll come back to your questions.
Yeah, thank you. I will start sharing. Okay, can you see it? Not yet, I guess, right? Okay, maybe you can compliment me and I will not just waste the time, okay? I want to share mainly experience of national actors, how we support in as well, like the ministry or in general system of social protection. We are all organizations here in Ukraine when full-scale invasion started. So we work exactly like humanitarian actors, and we do like more regular activities as Red Cross movement doing in other countries, as other international organizations as well. So basically it was some targeting, we supported, and even if we taken the list of some organizations, so it was like basic, as Darina mentioned, just to take this list and to support those people. But a bit after, I guess we did change our approach. It was from 2022. If we can move to another slide, thank you. So we start our cooperation with 3 ministries. We try to start to play more auxiliary role as Ukrainian Red Cross, and even in the law of Ukraine, it's strictly put in some of the clauses that we should play with auxiliary role of the government. So of course we can play like a humanitarian actors and do an emergency response, but as well we should accomplish what we're doing with all these state bodies, local authorities, communities. So we started 3 main programs together with ministries. Red Cross movement did, as already mentioned by Darina, some caseload with e-Dopomoga. Those time it was basically IDPs with disability type 1 and 2. Those times, but bigger our programs for support of veterans with disabilities type 1 and 2 with Ministry of Veteran Affairs. We are mainly consider it like additional vertical expansion to support those people. And the third cooperation with the ministry, it's a former Ministry of Integration of Temporary Occupied Territories. Now it's like a Ministry of National Unity from 2024 coming. With those ministry, we did 2 of the biggest programs. It's a newly, it's support, cash support in newly liberated areas. Well, MPCA was the first, we were like the first responder with MPCA after the occupation of 3 main regions, and we provide also additional support, not only cash but HPSS, relief items, etc. So we were like the first responder on support with the support of this ministry in 22-23. The next program that was also quite big and aligned what government did those time in support of IDPs, both like Ministry of Social Policy and Ministry of Integration of Occupied Territories. It's PeReHID, so it's additional cash support for host communities who accommodated IDPs. So we were the main partner of the government approximately for 2 more years. Maybe I guess the choice of Ukrainian Red Cross like was in this program basically like Ukrainian Red Cross in country maybe has the biggest number of branches comparing to any other national organization, national actors who plan. We have presence in all 24 regions. So some of them are occupied right now, but at least we have this presence. We move some of our branches to another region. So, and we strengthen this capacity with both like regular staff, with temporary staff, with volunteers as well. So we have access. And we can do a lot of community engagement accountability programs accomplished. We can do programs, as I mentioned, in the occupied territories with MHPSS, with relief items, WASH, etc. We are cooperating with clusters as well. So I guess it's a basic how we accomplish with both the vertical horizontal expansion of those programs those times, but moreover, and already was mentioned, but both my both panelists here, it was coordination. We were only one partner for all those programs, so we, I suppose, not the duplicate. Maybe something was separate done, but at least officially by each of these programs was created a decree or was MOU with those ministries, and we were the one partner who supports those people for a specific period of time, supporting government and in chance like make our auxiliary role as well. We also co-chairing like organization co-chairing cash working group in national international level from 2015 now to 2025. That is why for us like a matter of coordination is valuable as well as the duplication. And for us, was quite important those times to provide those IT or digital tools, how we can share the data, personal data, especially those huge amount with the government, even with the government has different levels from national, right, and the local authorities as well, how to collect proper, how also to have these connections with those people, not to lose them, and if they have additional needs or they have a request or we need to collect their feedback as well, how to proper and fast engage those people. And if all those people are already in those programs, and how we can or expand or make the support more efficient to have this bigger impact, not only to provide in cash or reimbursement for some services as well. So that is why we're trying like a movement from each like month, from each quarter when we have these programs to challenge us as well, how to support those people more, how to find out their needs, can we refer them to some other organizations, if it's possible to allocate more funding, but also was mentioned by other panelists that funding for these programs for social protection and cooperation with the government quite crucial. So how we can secure those funding for those periods, if it's possible for us like organizations to support those people as well for long term and more comprehensive. So it was a bit our ideas. Some of them was quite challenging, some of them was quite successful, but anyway, this was the role of Red Cross, Ukrainian Red Cross, with support of our partners of our movement, how we move from humanitarian regular emergency response to these more complex programs that should include different types of support, and after that what will be exit strategy as well. So it was a challenge not only for Ukrainian Red Cross but also partners who some of them did in other countries, have some experience, some of them not, but we go the same both like in a parallel with those government representatives and our partners, and as well with the movement in general, and of course like organization here in general in Ukraine. Can we move next slides, please? Yeah, as I already mentioned in the next one as well. Yes, and the next one. Yeah, for the last maybe year and a half, our approach a bit changed because our MOUs with the main ministries already finalized. So we are transfer programs to another organizations like PeReHID is hosting communities of IDPs to UNHCR. Some programs like Umapathi already is not like a priority. It's not like exist anymore in this format, but we try now to find out new ways how we can find the gap where government can support those, as we call it, people who are out of the system or who without any support, as we're working with cash. So for us, it's priority more cash, but we are not like limited also to provide additional services. That is why we, for the last half of the year, we are trying to pilot 2 programs or 2 ways in support of families of missing people. So we know that people who lost more like competence as well, so they have more support from the government. We try to investigate how we can complement those who are civilians and they without any statuses. Some of them somehow this also a way to where to research and work with government representatives. Why those people, let's say, receiving more benefits, but others not. It's a very, very precisely case management and referral tools that should be developed, but we find out that there is a bit gap in those programs, and we try to work with those who already applied to your CS to for find those missing people or somebody from their families. But we also find out that some people or families, they don't have like uncovered basic needs, but as well something else like more comprehensive that they need to find those relatives or beloved one. It's like legal additional expenditures. It's like DNA testing, but sometimes it should be like for free, sometimes it should be paid, etc. So all these expenditures make them so far from system where they can apply and receive something from government like benefits. Many of them are struggling as well receiving any support, and they using anything like legal assistance or they to apply to any legal assistance. So it was found out for the last couple of months. So we are now trying to figure out how we can like organization or support them, but maybe it's possible or not because people through all the country. We are looking forward cooperation with other organizations who can support maybe to have additional services for those people, or at least sharing those or documenting these lessons learned and try to find solutions with local authorities as well, or who are the main focal point for this kind of activities in the country from a governmental level. And second program for us, like organizations quite crucial, is rehabilitation and support of non-combatants or civilians with disabilities who are as well in this transition period. They not already in the Ministry of Social Protection, they do not receive any like pensions for disability, etc. But they are or can't receive for some reason this support, or they're out of system, or they don't want, and that is why they're always on the lack and they have this uncovered basic needs. So this is only pilots. It's not like a big programs that we did before with the ministries and their list, and it's not like super horizontal vertical expansion. But we try to dig and find out where your CS can have a place to support social protection and in general the system. How maybe we can create this mechanism, and we are working with Lukas, Fred, and other partners, maybe to find out a referral mechanism as well. How to exchange those caseload between partners, if it's feasible, if it's not, if it's needed, if governments see like national actors, not only your sales, like the main actors who can deliver this, or partially transitionally can do this role as well. So there are a lot of different options how national actors can support because of their presence, because of the known situation, and sometimes even of their big capacity, that we need to find out like, all together. That was mentioned by all our panelists as well. So how we are cooperating and how we're working. And yes, we can move forward to the main challenges. So even despite of all these programs, there are some challenges that we want to improve or move forward and discuss. And some of them already was mentioned. For us, quite challenging was the legal framework. We work with one big program, PeReHID, and the PeReHID changed ministries 3 times. So for us, 3 times we needed this setup of collaboration, change of decrees, sometimes it's even legal bureaucracy, etc. So if such kind of programs, of course, it's better for us to have any legal MOUs or decrees in this case, like for national actors as well. So how fast we can do this, how bureaucratic the system could be if governments see national actors like partners and can support us in this process as well. So it's data protection. So if we're working with the personal data, how we can integrate systems, governmental, international, with other financial service providers, it's the duplication to not overlapping our efforts of any organizations. It's integration maybe with other governmental systems that can validate those people or speed up this process of registration or validation as well. Data sharing is also mentioned. We are should require our internal legislative normative acts as well. But when you're working with the back donor, so they want to have like more information about beneficiaries as well. So our ready, like all organizations, to provide those information or not, what we consider like personal data, what is not, because there are some requirements from back donors, there is requirements internal, there is requirements from governments that we are working with. And as well, it's like communication and feedback mechanisms. Usually, like national actors and we as well, we can communicate quite directly through the hotlines or any other like digital solutions that we can use in directly to beneficiaries. But when we are working with the government or any local authorities, so there are some also bureaucratic processes how you can fast support those people, find out as well their needs. If it's just super operational technical part, supporting a program, those people even update their information. So it's also was quite a challenge, but I guess it's quite easy to go through it and discuss with partners. It's a funding to work and to support social protection system. We should know that we have secure funding, like national actors, and we try to communicate with and find out those big donors that it can be like a short-term solution or fragmented one, like few phase, etc. It should be secure for 1 year, 2 years to be sure that the system or the transition after or exit strategy will be done properly. And it's targeting for years how to find out those people who are out of the system. I guess maybe even ministries don't have this capacity right now. So it would be like a call, like our call, like who are not receiving any support from local authorities or not in this recalling system, right? So how else we find out those people? And if we find out those people, how to refer them if they're not fitting our requirements of those programs that we are agreed to provide together with the local authorities. So here it be tricky question as well, because many humanitarian actors working exactly with those people who have vulnerable criteria. They already in the system, all the elderly people that are receiving pension, all the already people with disability, large families, like single-headed households. So they somehow was before the war conflict, they are now in the system. Are we going to support and how are we going to complement with cash support, with providing additional assets and tools if we need to provide, or we need to move forward with another approach? So for us, even maybe the biggest challenge to find out those people who are not in the social protection system. And of course, it's opportunities what we see, even those programs of social protection, quite challenging. Can go to another slide, thank you. We see like good practices. So even if we cooperate with government and we have any decrease on the ground or MOUs, it's open for us some opportunities to fundraise, to show this program, to communicate legally with people or other partners. So definitely it's a plus in those kind of cooperation. Those kind of programs also led us to make the program scale. So we are with internal forces, we see only like a partial picture, and we work with small caseload, but we provide maybe better case management in this case, maybe not, it depends on capacity. If we're working openly with governmental programs, so it give us more, yes, scalability, but scalability is also discussion. What do we mean by scalability? It's also opportunity to integrate all the systems. So here's like more in the slide example, like IDEA. So if there are some integrations with the governmental databases, so IDEA was already presented by Darina. So it's a faster validation of people if they're quite digital, if they use it as well. And it's integration with those systems, so we can make our approaches. We can create approaches in the same way. It will be both like accountable and transparency for all the parties who are involved, beginning from the who is funding, who are providing lists, who are validating, who are working with the communities, etc. And of course, what we see the next like opportunity, and like it's our goal of like Ukrainian Red Cross. We want to more to be engaged in these referral systems, because we already find out those cases that should be referred somehow. But how and to whom and how this network should look like in the future, for us, for now, it's an added challenge, but also an opportunity how to work with those people. If we want to lose them like an organization and to refer to someone else, if it's possible in the future to support them or not. If yes, so what will be then approaches or solution in this case? So that is why it should be cooperation with all main actors who are providing the same services, even or cash support. How we see what they joint move forward. So there are a lot of room for improvement, but national organizations definitely have the capacity somehow to fill the gap of social protection if there is some of these gaps. So it's basically the piece who is sharing presentation. Okay, thank you. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you so much, Olena. So I think this was an answer to Larissa from the chat, I would say, like how this collaboration with the government, whether it's really big and difficult. Well, it is and it is not. I would say that's my learning from Olena's presentation. And but definitely it's an asset to work with and to keep in mind when organizing and delivering humanitarian programming. Our time is slowly coming to an end, so we'll just proceed to wrap up. And of course, if anyone stays on the call later, we could still have a question or two. But to be fair to those that have meetings coming after, we'll just jump straight to some summary of lessons learned that we generated as a bigger group within the PeReHID initiative, and some of them hopefully may also answer some of your questions. So so first of all, ensure preparedness and context awareness. Social protection system is part of the context. So that was something that that is sounding across the response in Ukraine, thinking about what we can leverage, how we can do that, and following up a little bit on Nithin and Darina, think about the preparedness before the system preparedness and the fiscal preparedness. because of course in Ukraine we did have a war since 2014, and we did a lot, but we could have done also more, and the same applies to other contexts. Invest early in shock responsive social protection programs. In the timeline that Darina was showing, it showed remarkable speed at actually setting up and already, having prior investments to social protection programs. So that's very important. Sorry, I had to just tell my son I wasn't sure that you could hear him. Consider the social protection system in designing humanitarian interventions. Yes, social protection lens. That's how we started calling it. What are the gaps? There are obviously groups that are undercovered, that are emerging to be covered in emerging social protection systems. And that's something to take into consideration. Interestingly, it breaks some of the stereotypes. Some of the vulnerable groups are actually protected in Ukraine, and therefore they're usually vulnerable groups. They may be less vulnerable in this particular context. Then things that were mentioned several times: leverage government systems to deliver humanitarian or emergency assistance that can be either, and resolve data protection considerations. For any interoperability to be effective, the legal framework for data sharing and the data custodianship needs to be sorted out. And then going a bit to Carla's question in the chat, ensure coherence among and between social protection, humanitarian access, and the government. This is the big question. And what came around repeatedly was support joint planning, collective outcome settings, financing across development and humanitarian sectors, and actually built on existing structures. What was mentioned in Ukraine was particularly work with the sector working group on social protection, which is more as a standard element, but also supporting on the humanitarian side, the intercluster coordination group and the cash working group to be really empowered to pursue the social protection linkages agenda and to keep itself informed, because in Ukraine, to keep track of the legislative development is actually a full-time job. It's a great job that the Ministry of Social Policy is doing, but it also requires investments from the partner side to keep understanding what the context is. And then finally, delineate the two spaces, because if the spaces are not delineated, the humanitarian space and the social protection space on policy level, obviously programming will struggle to keep itself deduplicated or not focusing on the same target groups, leading to basically either double inclusion, same targeting criteria, or double exclusion, in reverse. So how do we do that? What is responding to what? And then some particular things for Ukraine: reducing lead times of key social protection programs and addressing access and inclusion barriers. In Ukraine, this is a thing. Social protection system is huge, very cost efficient, very comprehensive, but of course it is, as any system, cannot deliver in an hour, and that can be actually a critical gap, not the hour but a day or a week, etc., that is related to timeliness of assistance. And finally, focusing on embedding the linkages between the humanitarian response and social protection in key donor policies. And this is a call out, of course, to the homework that always we have for our donor colleagues on actually asking for the coherence, asking for the linkages, and guiding and leading in this direction. So these are actually the lessons learned from the wide collaboration between the ministry, the partners, and with the support from the technical assistance facility. We are happy for your participation, and I think we have actually now already time. We are at the end of our time slot. Thank you so much. To be happy to stay in touch over email or through other means. So you will receive these presentations, and you can also subscribe to the mailing list or check some of the publications that the partnership has developed over time. Thank you. Yeah, and of course, thank you to the panelists. Thank you, Olena, Darina, Nithin in the absence, and Frederic for the support.